Hi everybody, welcome to the Let's Thrive and Shine podcast. And just in case you've not been here before, this is all about, on the topic, should I say, of burnout, imposter syndrome, things, limiting beliefs. And it's about business owners or entrepreneurs or leaders, executives, doesn't matter where you come from within that environment, where you might feel that you're being held back because of those reasons. And then the guests that we have on here, such as Lorraine Connell, we've experienced these journeys, should I say, and learnt from those experiences. And now we're actually utilising them in a way where we can either help ourselves, but also to be able to help others to be able to move away from those situations themselves. And it's about creating hope that there is another way, there is an opportunity to move away from that situation. And the only thing that's limiting us is our beliefs in ourselves. And the way we can unlock that is by changing that. And with Lorraine, one of the things that she'll be talking about tonight is about shifting from a victim belief. And without further ado, Lorraine, introduce yourself, please.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Lorraine Connell, and I am a youth educator leadership coach. And what that means is that I help young adults with the self-confidence, the problem solving, and the decision-making skills that we all really miss out on in the development of our young adult lives.
And thank you very much. And it's actually really fortuitous, Lorraine, because where I've been today is at a business networking group where we've been doing speed dating effectively with students, not dating, of course, because that'd be wrong, but with students, but again, unlocking their limiting beliefs, showing them that there is an opportunity and there is another way. And as I just mentioned, the only thing that's limiting you is your belief in yourself. Because I do come from an area where we've got quite a deprived area. It's income, poor opportunities, and one of the lowest rated hourly rate in the whole of the country. So you will have individuals within our area that automatically assume that because we're in a deprived area, because there's a job opportunity, in their head they're saying, well, what's the point? There's no point in trying, and you are. And yet you're not limited by your environment. As we're here, I'm talking to you on the other part of the world, and it means that you can do training, coaching, development, online systems. I mean, most kids, they've almost been given a phone when they're born. So the advantage they've got over our age group and upwards is that we don't know technology and automation and all those kind of things, and yet they do. So they can help the likes of us to be able to unlock our limiting beliefs and be able to help us. So this is where people like you are so fantastic, Lorraine, because you're opening up that opportunity. So anyway, tell us a bit more about that. Tell me your journey. Why are you doing this in the first instance?
Well, something that you just said really resonated with me in that limiting belief that we are not capable or we don't have the skills. And that is part of why I'm doing what I'm doing right now. Is when I was a teacher, and I was a teacher for about 20 years before I became this leadership coach, I taught chemistry, and chemistry, as many of your listeners may remember, is a really hard subject for a lot of people. And often what I would do in my classes is I would pair kids up. And I really paired them up with the intent that one student knew more of the content than the other. And so there was this limiting belief from me, and then again transferred on to the students that I was working with, that the only one bringing value to the partnership was the one who knew more about what they were combining together. And what I had later determined, which is where I am and why I'm doing the work that I'm doing, is that both of those students brought value to the partnership. We emphasize the content as teachers, as in the academic world. We really emphasize what you know and what you don't know. And so the student who didn't know was given this belief system that they didn't bring anything of value to the group or the partnership. And that couldn't be further from the truth, as I've recently started to uncover in the work that I'm doing, is The student who didn't know the content had to share with the other student that they needed a different type of instruction. They needed a different way to explain it. And they forced and brought value to the other student to learn how to communicate differently, learn how to listen better. And what better skills than being able to communicate and listen are there? So, limiting belief is that the person who doesn't know the material isn't bringing value. But in reality, if I'm able to open that door and share that with other students, then anytime there's a partnership, both partners have value to offer. And that ties in a little bit to my story of the limiting belief that I had about myself as a teacher.
Mhm.
And so what love teaching. I was probably in year 15 and I was feeling kind of stuck. I'm a great teacher. I love what I'm doing, but what else is there? And I had this limiting belief that if I wasn't a teacher, I could only be an administrator. Or if I wasn't a teacher, I wasn't anything else. And 5 years later, I was put in a position where I had been sort of forced to make a decision. Are you going to stay in teaching or are you going to find something else? And I felt that I had been pushed into that decision by somebody else. I felt like I was the victim. I didn't get to make a choice of what happened to me next. And I spent a long time feeling sorry for myself, to be quite honest. And I didn't look at the bigger picture that I made some decisions that got me to that position. And I wouldn't have changed any one of those positions if I look back on them. Would I have given kids a voice? Absolutely. Would I have stood up for those students? Absolutely. Did it mean that I didn't have a choice in whether I was going to stay in the role that I was in or not? I think I had a lot to do with that decision. And if I stood and remained in that victim place, then I wouldn't see the options or the opportunities that arose from that experience.
I know it's almost like you have this sort of eureka moment, isn't it? The realization, but what's the beauty of hindsight? So, if only we
Absolutely.
knew what we know now, but the reality is that we don't know. And it's from those learning experiences that you reach these conclusions. I think one of the biggest things that I've experienced over the years is that when you've got this role as a mentor versus a mentee, and this belief that you're actually guiding the other person, which is absolutely not true, because it's it's a two-way street. And quite often I do mentoring for the Santander program, and the women that are on there, they're phenomenal women, really highly educated, experienced, hardworking, set up their own businesses. And when they're reading off to me all the things they've done, I'm thinking, maybe this should be the other way around. But then as you're going through, all of a sudden they say something, you're like, right, there it is. That's what you need from me. But as you're going through the whole process together, you suddenly realize that actually there's so much that they're giving back to you, experiences and learning. And it's the same with when you've got a junior team. There's junior members of the team think, well, I don't know better than you, that's so not true, because as you say, you've got all the young blood that's used to technology, different experiences, different examples, and they can give you so much back. And it's extremely arrogant of someone that just because they're older, more experienced, know better. And that isn't the truth. And that's why it's so important to recognize that it's only your beliefs that's going to be holding you back or somebody else. And I don't know whether it was with you that we had this conversation, that if you tell a class of students that they are not going to succeed, then they'll start believing they're not going to succeed. And that's when their low marks occur. Yet you could have the same group a year later, and they've done it scientifically, and say, this lot are going to be the best in the year. And they end up being the best of the year because they've been told it, because they have that belief. It's incredible how you can switch your mind or switch somebody else's mind. So yes, I mean, obviously now you're educating others to do things in a different way. But who are you actually helping in that environment other than students? Is it with the parents and children, or is it schools? How are you educating now, or leaders?
Yeah. So, I mean, the gap that I saw was that we had all of these leaders and they weren't performing to the expectation that we wanted for leaders. And oftentimes, inadvertently, without the skills of leadership, we can cause a lot of harm in leadership. And so my struggle was where are we providing this training, right? So oftentimes leaders will get elevated into a leadership position because they're good at what they're doing, but that doesn't mean they're good at managing others. And we kind of just expect them to be good at both of those things. And so I asked a lot of questions like where and how and why aren't we providing these leadership training skills? And I came up empty. Like I didn't see anywhere in the journey of a leader where they were getting the skills. And
Mm,
so it depended on the person and the individual if they wanted to get that training, right? There's training out there and there's resources out there, but it wasn't an equitable offering to everyone. And if you stepped into leadership and you didn't necessarily know you weren't a good leader, you might not seek out those opportunities of growth. And while I would love to be able to go and tell some of these leaders, hey, let's do some training, let's get started. A lot of times they're already so far into the lead mode that they believe they're doing a great job. And that's a really hard belief to counteract. It becomes personal, they become defensive, and that's not my intent. So I had to go back. And I, being a high school teacher, really love working with teenagers. And so I saw this opportunity to go into schools, work with young adults all over virtually, and give them these opportunities that are so scarce in society and school because the belief that we need a title to be a leader and there are not enough titles to go around.
mm.
And so if I believe that I need a title and the title is already being occupied by somebody else, does that mean I'm not a leader? And that's the thing that I want to change. I want everybody to see that you are a leader. Just because you don't have a title doesn't mean you can't lead from where you are. And so, yes, I'm working mostly with youth. I'm really trying to hit parents as well because parents are the most important leaders out there. And myself as a parent didn't see myself as a leader until I started this journey of leadership development. So that's who I'm working with.
Which, I mean, it was a perfect time to start is when they are actually that younger. Because as you say, I mean, interestingly, self-same conversation. It was one of the chaps that actually runs the event we was at today. And he said one of the things that he used to struggle with is that he'd do leadership training. And he said, and the companies would bring him into it, but because they didn't have it as a compulsory thing, it was, if you wanted to attend, it's there and available. But he said, and so many of them thought that they knew better and they was great managers and leaders and all that lot. And he said, well, and yet the CEO's going, they absolutely suck and they need something doing about it. And what should have happened is that they should have turned around as a CEO saying, look, we've seen a gap here, and you're creating a burning platform but in a positive way. And this is like, instead of, right, you're all high performing individuals, but how do we turn you into high performing teams? And that's by communicating on a much better level. And this is why we're doing this training. So it's not about you, it's about us and how we can take each other for a higher level. But because of this, albeit a level of arrogance, so that
Right.
thinking I know best and you don't know, and I'm brilliant at this job technically, so therefore I must be a brilliant manager, which is so not true. And
Right.
equally, those individuals don't know if they've never been told. So they go through the ranks in a bullish manner, so to speak, not inspiring people. You know, it's using the carrot and the stick rather than actually through inspiration, because I don't like using the word motivation, but inspiration. And yeah, so it was exactly the same conversation as you're saying, this assumption that, yes, well, we're so good. We don't need any training at all. And as you say, parents are the best leaders because we're leading from an early age, and the way in which you approach things can make or break things. And have you Brené Brown, have
Yes,
you, yeah, and one of
love
the things
her.
she talks about, and she is brilliant, she was talking about, you know, with her children's, one of the things that she does with them is that, you know, look, we have two options. Right, you know, she's asked them to say switch out the light, and they've gone, no, I'm not going to switch out the light. And she says, well, there's two options. If I do it, then it means tomorrow night, then you're not going to have your watching TV or whatever it is that you do that's your special time. Or you turn it off, and tomorrow night you still get them. So they're your two choices. But she's doing it in a way where she's not telling them off, she's not shouting at them, she's just saying, here's your choice. You can decide how you're going to make this. And it is all how
Right.
you approach that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I often will ask people who come to me is, what are the requirements to being a leader? And I will get inevitably the number of people I'm asking, I will get the same number of responses. And I will reflect back to them that those are qualities of a leader. They're not requirements of a leader. The only requirement, and this is my pitch, is that the only requirement is that you make a decision. Because anytime you make a decision, there are usually two options, and each option is going to take you in one direction or another. And only you are the one that can say that direction is the direction that I inevitably want to go. And so that's, once I break that down and everybody realizes, well, I make decisions all the time, then I am already a leader. And that diffusing that belief that you need a title, you need to be whatever myth we're operating under, which is why we can't be a leader. I break it into something so simple that you can't deny your leadership at that point.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, if you've got a group of young adults or children, there's always going to be that leader within the group, and others will follow because of the nature of their personality, the way they show up, and everything like that. Now, sometimes, arguably, it might be for the wrong reasons, but
Right.
a leader, you know, I mean, I hate to use a term, but I mean, we've got many leaders that are not ones that we want to remember, like Hitler and all that lot, but
Yes.
what makes them so powerful is because of their leadership style. They're inspirational. People will follow them and things like that. So, so I'm intrigued. So obviously you've had this sort of eureka moment. How has it helped you in terms of your relationship with your own children? Change, is it you change the way you're doing things in a much better way now, obviously, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I currently have two teenagers, and I think I really started to develop my real understanding of what the impact of the lack of leadership for kids was when my kids started to get a little bit older. And I would think, like, these opportunities should be available for my kids. Why aren't they available for my kids? And so when I noticed that there wasn't the opportunity, I just started to engage them a little bit differently to try and help them see themselves as leaders, right? And so you referenced with Brené Brown, I can make the decisions for you, but anytime I'm making that decision, you're not having the opportunity to learn or make a mistake. And often, if I look back, mistakes were not okay, right? Don't do that. Don't touch that. I wouldn't allow them to experience the mistake and then talk to them about it. And now, as they're teenagers, I'm so grateful that I'm able to like step back and say, wow, what do you think of that decision? Did you think that that went the way you wanted it to go?
Yeah.
No? Okay. What would you have done differently? And why would you have done it differently? And really engaging in those kinds of conversations.
Mm.
And that's as simple as it is in developing leadership and the qualities that you need to be a good leader. It's really, when I think about how simple it is, it's almost sad. I almost get a little sad that I didn't know sooner so that I could have been developing my own leadership understanding earlier in my own life.
And I think it could save a lot of heartache and friction with
Yes.
families, but and even partnerships. If we are given these tools and strategies, it's amazing, isn't it? You need oh, well, not so much now, but things like a license for a dog, or you learn how to drive, all those kind. But no one gives you any lessons on how to be a parent. And I know that children are different, so there's not a one size fits all. But if you're given some tools and strategies of how you can manage it in a much better way, it would stop so many arguments, stop the confrontation. You turn around and say, when the kids are just going through puberty and they're going through a whole host of emotions, and they're studying and they're dating and they're doing all of these things where it's like, and which is no wonder they turn and say, I hate you, mum or dad, you don't understand me, you don't listen,
Yeah.
because we're not taking that time to actually ask from their position what it is that they want. So because if you was a good leader, if you was going to someone with a problem, your CEO or leader or manager, and saying, look, I've got this problem, blah blah blah, if they turn it around, a good leader would turn it around. Well, what do you think you could do differently? And then it
Absolutely.
sparks curiosity, doesn't it? And then they go, oh,
Yeah.
right then. And they might come up with a couple of ideas. Well, okay, then, well, which of those ideas do you think would be better, and why? So you're going down that path of curiosity rather than answering for them. And many people end up helicopter parenting their children. And as you say, not enabling them to think, not enabling them to make mistakes. And as they're young children, okay, sometimes you do need to go, stop doing that, but you need to explain why, because if you do
Yes.
that, you're going to burn your hands. So there's a rationale behind it, but not, you stop doing it. Well, why? Well, because I tell you so. Well, that's no use.
Right, right. Well, and I think we often get caught in this belief that the leader is the one that makes all of the decision. And I think that that really stymies the ability for an industry, for a business to move forward. If I'm not the leader, I have to wait to check with the leader to make any decision, then I'm not being productive. And it comes from that belief of top down, right? There's one person at the top making all of the decisions. Everybody else who's down below, if you think of a mountain, right? Everybody on the base of the mountain, we're all waiting for you to tell us what to do. It slows innovation, it slows the ability to move forward. It really is a reducing agent in development, even in the house,
100%.
right? The parent and kids.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like that, empowering people to be able to make
Yes.
decisions. I used to be a program delivery director, and obviously we was in a massive organization. And one of the things that used to frustrate me intensely is that there might be someone my opposition, but in a completely different role, technical role or something like that, and they've gone, Katie, I've got this great idea. Well, no, that's not true. They've got this great idea, but they've got to go to their boss, to ask their boss, to ask my boss. So it goes up, down, and all the way along. And then it takes you 3 weeks for a decision, where I could have picked up the phone to someone and got, there's a great idea. What do you think of this? Empowering them to be able to make the decision. And it's like, was it sometimes it's better to ask for permission?
Yes. Yes.
Just, and if you make a mistake, that's fine, but don't castigate them for making a
Right.
mistake. What did you learn from that experience? How would you do it
Right.
differently next time?
Right. And why do we ask our children, like, did you learn something from that mistake? Why are we asking that question? It's so that they can process and understand that the mistake yes, it cost them something, but what was the value in that mistake? And those are really, really, really great learning
Mm.
opportunities.
It expands the mind, doesn't it? Creates
Yes.
curiosity. And as you say, not stymies it. You know, I mean, I was always a why person at work. I was like, why this, why that, why? You know, because I'm saying, where did you manage to be successful? And I said, because I kept on asking why, and
Mm,
create that curiosity. So I had that learning mind. So I got another thing to do, another thing to do, another thing to do, and you end up expanding your opportunities. And this is what this Paul was talking about today: is that in businesses, you can have students that come in that have got loads of GCE in the UK. It's like GCE, A levels, degrees, masters, and everything like that. He said, yeah, that's fine, and we're not saying to take those things, but he said it doesn't stop you. I had no exams when I left school, not anything of value anyway. It was only curiosity that got me through the ranks. And what he was saying to them is that just because you haven't passed an exam doesn't mean to say that you can't be successful. What it is
right.
what we are looking for is people that have got like passion and drive and curiosity and how they show up, their behavior. Do they show up on time? And have they got a good attendance record? Do they actually put themselves out there to try things and learn new things? Go and learn somebody else's job and all those kind of things. If you show that initiative, then they go, they're someone to watch out for. They don't go, oh,
Yes.
they haven't got a master's degree, so we're not going to recruit them unless you're in a really weird company, and then that means that they're limiting themselves. So that's their own
Right.
problem,
Exactly.
companies. And frankly, do you want to be a part of a company that's only got that mindset? No. So, I don't want to be
Right.
in a so anyway, so I could talk about this side of it. Ages is something I feel really passionate about, as you could probably see. So I'm intrigued. So if you was going to be given 3 top tips for the listeners, what would they be?
My first tip would be to accept that mistakes are inevitable. And if you, as the leader of that business, hide your mistakes, then you're sending the message that you believe perfection is possible. And then your anybody below you is also going to believe that. And then they will hide their mistakes. The other tip that I would say is that do not limit your beliefs. Go backwards, right? So if I go back to that moment where I felt like I had been victimized by my employer, and I stayed there and believed that I had no influence over what happened, I would have been stuck. So if you are in that feeling of I'm not enough, I can't do these things, go backwards and see where's an example of where you did do something. Maybe not the same experience, but there is an experience somewhere in your journey where you have done something that you thought was impossible, and validate that you did that. And then my third tip is that leadership is a skill that we develop. You're not born with it. And great leaders will continue developing those skills. And it, even if you are a great leader or a terrible leader, you can always get better.
Well, as one of my big sayings is, we are a work of art in the making, and we will
Yes.
continue to be until the day we die, because we just keep on evolving and improving, as long as you've got that mindset of growth, that you do keep on
Yes.
evolving and growing. And I'm going to say I'm part of a speaker academy, and you meet fascinating people, and some of the people that show up and join there, to segue, they're 80 years old. So they're starting a new beginning at 80 years old. It is never, ever too late to learn something
No.
new, start a new business, start a new career, do something completely different. Never limit yourself, no matter where you are, what age you are, whatever your background is. Well,
Yes. 100%.
definitely. So, the other thing is that, so if you had a book that you would recommend to someone, what would that be?
I love when people ask me about a book, but really it's about just continuing to read and to continue finding a new book. Read even a young adult, nonfiction, fiction, read from somebody else's perspective, because I have found that I have learned the most by walking in somebody else's shoes through a story. And I love so much of the young adult fiction and nonfiction that's out there right now. There's so much value in reading about somebody of a different color. I have lived on this earth as a white woman for my entire life. I have no idea what it's like to live in a body of a different colored skin. But if I read somebody's story, I can, for a minute, know what it's like to walk in their shoes and build a little bit of empathy for me. There's amazing books out there in the young adult world. Anger is a Gift is a really great book. And I just can't say enough about reading from somebody else's perspective. So I don't have just one book.
Well, to be quite honest, I've got thousands of books, but sometimes, in that moment, there's a book that's in your mind all of the time. I mean, I'm a big fan of what we say when we talk to ourselves as Helmstetter. And it
Oh, yeah.
just has been a game changer, not just for me, my husband, people in my life. I've given it to so many people and said, please read this, because we negative self-talk on such a regular
100%.
basis without even realizing we're doing it. Things like, oh, I'm so stupid. Why do I always do that? I can never remember that. All of those phrases. But if you flip it and reframe it, it can change the way in which we see things. And the more we say the positive approach, the more positive we become in life, the more open our mind is, the problem solving, all of those kind of things that come out, and just
Yes.
seeing it. And it's just been groundbreaking. I love it. And as I say, Daring Greatly with
Yes, Brene Brown. Yes, I was just going to
brilliant,
say
brilliant.
any of her
Yeah.
books.
Yeah, yeah, and even listen to a podcast. I'm one of these ones that's always listening to stuff. But the one thing I have learned, and this is one thing I would say to anybody that's listening or watching, when you read a book, if you really like it, don't just read it that once. Read it several times, bed it in. Because if you do it once, you go, oh, that was a great book. And then you then walk away and you start forgetting it. If you read it again or listen to it again, then it's bedding it in a little bit more. Then you read it again and listen to it, well, it's bedding it in properly. So you really grasping it, because quite often we walk away from something and then it then passes. So that's a piece of advice I give to
I
anybody
love that
that
advice.
it's really powerful. And I mean, I'm one that likes to listen and have the book as well. So I like making notes in it, and then hearing it again and listening to it. This is just a piece of fun, actually. But if you had a playlist of songs that you'd use to lift yourself up and boost your energy, or whatever it would be, maybe you're having a down day, what would be a couple of the songs that you would have on your playlist?
Oh man. So there are a lot of songs names that I don't know, but when I hear them, they drive me like so much energy. And I would say like old soul, Aretha Franklin, Whitney Houston, those kind of things that when they come on, it's like I have forgotten the joy that they bring me, and they come on the radio and I am like a different person, and all I want to do is sing and move and dance. And yeah, so those would be the artists that I would reach for.
Which I love all of those. And the important thing that you've just said there is not just the singing, but the moving. So another thing in terms of a tip is that if you're feeling stuck, if you're sat, you're not moving, you will stay stuck. By motion, you are moving away from the problem. So I'd invite any of you, if you have one of those days where things aren't quite right, when you are moving away from it and you are going for a walk or you are dancing or doing yoga, whatever it is, you're moving away from the problem.
I love that.
So one other question: if you was able to ask your go back to your 20-year-old self, what would be the one piece of advice that you would give?
I would tell her that your greatest weakness that you perceive to be a weakness is actually probably your superpower. And I wish I had known that years ago. And maybe that the person in my head who was talking to me is me, and I can change the script.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Absolutely
Yeah.
brilliant. So Lorraine, where can people find you? I mean, do you have anything that you'd like to share to our audience? Maybe a free asset or something like that to come and find you?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a free Facebook group for parents and educators and really anybody looking to improve leadership, and that is called Leadership for Our Kids. And there's no requirements to joining, and we can all be growing and learning in leadership. And people can find me at Peers Not Fears on social media platforms. And my website is also Peers Not Dash Fears. Love for anyone to reach out and connect. My favorite thing in the world is to make connections for other people. So if you just want to pick my brain and connect and let me know what you're doing, I'm sure I would have a lot of people to connect you with, because that's something I love doing.
Yes, I love that as well. It's a wonderful thing, isn't it? When you suddenly speak to someone, you go, I've got just the person. Because I think when we first
Yes.
spoke, I went, I know someone that can talk to you, and that's a lady called Donna that she does Ed Matadors, and she likes educators that do something different. So changing the
Ooh.
status quo around the world. Um, so thank you ever so much. We will, of course, make sure that all your social media links are shared on the YouTube channel and also within the Facebook group. Let's Thrive and Shine Beyond Belief. And feel free to reach out to Lorraine or write some comments in the post when we actually share it. But other than that, thank you once again, Lorraine. It's been a pleasure having you on here, and also for everybody else. If you're enjoying this, please feel free to share it with somebody else that you think it might benefit them in terms of whether it is leaders, transformation experts, entrepreneurs, anyone that you think it could inspire them, but also not hold back their limiting beliefs, not cause burnout, and also make sure they don't need to wear that mask, because we never need to, because we're all enough. So anyway, thank you ever so much, Lorraine, and appreciate you
Thank you
being.
as well. It's been a
Thank you.
joy.
Cheers.